Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latex.
Today, Trump administration on defense over its treatment of migrant children, and it's acting to remove 300 from a Texas federal facility that had horrific conditions, 10-year-old children taking care of sick toddlers because there was no one else to, untreated flu and lice outbreaks. And on this program, we've reported on the Trump DOJ going to court to argue that they want to be able to legally deny those very kids who are in detention soap, toothbrushes, blankets. Now, few politicians in any party want to be seen supporting that kind of position, but it is factually the current position of the Trump administration. Vice President Pence just conceded that, quote, of course children should be provided toothbrushes and blankets, and then he goes on to try to pretend he doesn't know that he and his boss are doing the exact opposite. I turn to former acting Solicitor General Neal Katyal, who's argued dozens of cases before the Supreme Court and leads our opening argument series. And Neal, I want to get right into it. Take a listen to that very Trump lawyer who was just referenced getting grilled on this in court. And this clip, not only did we hit it on the beat, it's also gone viral online.
If you're putting people into a crowded room to sleep on a concrete floor with an aluminum foil blanket on top of them, that doesn't comply with the agreement. I mean, it may be that they don't get super thread counts Egyptian linens. I get that. But the testimony that the district judge believed was, it's really cold. I find that inconceivable that the government would say that that is safe and sanitary.
If you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary.
Maybe are.
Neal, there's layers to this. I want to hear all of your views. One thought that came to my mind is even good lawyers can struggle if the position they're asked to defend is basically empty, immoral, indefensible. I wonder what you thought of what we learned from watching that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that struggling was the least that should have happened there. I mean, that was a horrific policy decision by the Trump administration to say that safe and sanitary conditions don't include toothbrushes, don't include blankets, forcing people to sleep on concrete floors with only a sheet of aluminum foil over them as a blanket, saying that sleep is not part of a safe and sanitary condition. I mean, all this stuff is horrific. And, I do think that the Trump administration deserves all the condemnation that they received in the wake of that. These are not even the Geneva Conventions require prisoners of war to get toothbrushes and soap. I mean, the idea that we can't do that, or what the vice president said, the appropriations process prevents it, that's just flatly wrong. And the idea that he would laugh and talk about this stuff is so unbecoming of a president of the United States. And coming from this administration, which can find money anywhere, they declare emergencies for all kinds of bogus things like building a wall. But when it comes to finding toothbrushes for 5-year-old children who need it, they can't find it. That's just so implausible to me. Any third grader can read the federal budget and find the dollars for this without resorting to all their crazy executive powers power schemes, which they do for things like the wall. But to come from this administration, it's already, well, a little bit rich.
I also want to get your sort of views and fact check on the Trump claim that he's got to do this stuff because of either past precedent or past presidents. Take a look.
We've ended separation. You know, under President Obama, you had separation. I was the one that ended it. Now, I said one thing. When I ended it, I said, here's what's going to happen. More families are going to come up, and that's what's happened. But they're really coming up for the economics. But once you ended the separation, but I ended separation. I inherited separation from President Obama.
Neal?
Oh my God, where to begin? So the idea that he ended separation, I mean, right now, these are separated children. That's what these stories are about. So I don't know what kind of facts he's getting, but nobody thinks that's right. And the idea that he inherited this from Obama is flatly wrong. I think President Trump has separated over 3,000 children in the course of his administration. No other president came even close to that. President Obama basically came in and recognized there were two different goals of our immigration system here. One's humanitarian, to protect the children who are separated. The other is deterrence, the idea that if you do too much for them, then they'll come in. And he quickly realized that deterrence was just a bogus rationale, that these people were fleeing horrific conditions in their home countries, and deterrence wasn't going to work. And so he moved to a humanitarian policy, spending billions of dollars on shelters and things like that to make sure that these children would be treated safely. Not all the time, but I think far better than Trump. Trump has made it his kind of raison d'etre to say, absolutely not, I'm going to focus only on deterrence, the one thing we know doesn't work. And so he has said in his policies that we're going to make things as horrific as possible so that these folks won't come. And by the way, Ari, that hasn't worked at all. We've had record numbers, and you just heard one of your guests talking about this, record numbers of people trying to come because deterrence doesn't work. The only thing you can do here is try and be humanitarian. And, this is a president that separated a 4-month-old baby from their parents, whose 6 children have died just since September in custody of these folks. If you go back a decade, not a single child died. So inherited from Obama, I don't think so.
And lastly, briefly, it's the cameras in the courtroom that made that clip go viral. What do you think that tells us about transparency in the court system? Because sometimes people don't even know what's going down.
Yeah, it's so important. People say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but when it comes to the law, a picture is worth like 10,000 words because laws, frankly, makes most people's eyes glaze over when you talk about consent decrees and declaratory judgments and the like. And I think when you see that clip and you see the cold, hard truth of what the Trump administration is arguing, boy, that really resonates with the American public. And this is all because this Court of Appeals in San Francisco televises its arguments. And so that's why we're all able to see it. Most federal courts don't. The U.S. Supreme Court, tellingly, there are no cameras in that courtroom, even though these are the people's courts. And so I hope that we use this as an illustration of really the power of the digital world. And, we now think in terms of pictures and video, Instagram and the like, YouTube. We don't think as much in terms of a cold transcript. And if you just listened to that DOJ lawyer and watched her, you had come off very differently than if you were reading a cold legal transcript.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I think you make a great point. And the judges. Judges, of course, are quite careful. And there'd be many arguments that wouldn't become viral precisely because you wouldn't even know where they were going. Here, though, the sheer human gasps from people who are judges but are also people about.
And Ari, I'd say one thing. One of those judges was Wally Tashima, who actually had been interned in a Japanese American camp at the age of 7 during World War II. And you could tell when you were watching him that experience seared him. And when you have these reports that are going on, like today's, the New Yorker report on Saturday, showing that children are having to take care of other children, 10-year-olds taking care of 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds because nobody else will, and eventually the 10-year-olds get bored, so no one's taking care of the 2-year-olds. These are not the things that our country has stood for, and these are human beings. And what this administration is doing is such a grave human catastrophe. They deserve all the condemnation they've gotten.
It is Tuesday, the 25th of May of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Just a little smidgen, a small fraction of a dash of Hungarian smoked hot paprika. It makes all the difference in the world. You should try it. Indeed. Yes, well, folks, every condemnation, and I should add, every penalty that this administration has coming them will be due them. And I don't think it's going to stop with just a removal from office. There's going to be some steps before we even get to the more, what I consider to be quite serious crimes against humanity, for instance. I consider them to be fairly serious. We're arguing whether a concentration camp is a concentration camp, the way we still have to argue whether an assault rifle is still an assault rifle. I don't care if Bernie's going to fix it. I put that little, we'll call it an ad hominem of, concentration camps and assault rifles. And so now I'm getting, for some reason, Bernie bots hitting me. Bernie bots. I don't care if Bernie can fix it. I'm talking about right at this very moment. Yeah, the British started concentration camps during the Boer War. I don't know. I might even consider a reservation to be a concentration camp of sorts. Certainly, when Native Americans were held within the confines of a fort. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, they were held in cages, given some polio contaminated blankets. Here, have some smallpox with your polio. Actually, it wasn't polio, it was smallpox. Here, have some smallpox. And, yeah. Yes, and I'm sure no one called them concentration camps then. Really. And we aren't calling them death camps, even though children are dying almost on purpose. So I don't care if Bernie can fix it. I really don't. I want it fixed right now. And when it is fixed, I don't want these ghouls to get away. I want them to suffer for their crimes. I don't mean in any retribution. Au contraire, as I've said many times. We're not the fly in the ointment. We're the honey in your bitter lemon. Yes, indeed. Well, I've also said that I never dared be radical when young for fear that I would turn into, a racist biker boomer when old. Apologies to Robert Frost. I always liked Robert Frost, even though his verse was rather blank. Rather. I still can't get over that we're arguing whether sleep is a humane activity or inhumane. Jesus. You can't sleep. You're a 6-year-old. You can't sleep. You're a 3-year-old. You can't sleep. Yeah, actually, these camps, these centers, private, by the way, so apparently constitutional guarantees don't apply in the confines of a private enterprise. Interesting, right? Well, in many cases, reports by politicians and reporters who have been able to get in somehow are that they're so crowded that people are literally having to stand. They can't lay down, even with an aluminum blanket. Here, have an aluminum blanket. You'll stay warm. Put it over you. Sleep on the cold concrete, if there is any. Aluminum blankets only work if you can hold the heat in. That's not going to happen on concrete. Give me an effing break. Jeez, I just... And also within the confines of Southern Oregon, you cannot believe, well, maybe you can, How many people think that that's just perfectly okay to treat another human being like that? And purport to be Christians? You know, this is the other thing that really bothers me with, I don't know, what do you want to call them, the other side? This current manifestation of ignorance, writ large, is that it doesn't matter if you've actually become well-versed in Bible verse. They don't care. Their faith is even much more important and immediate than even the Bible. They don't care what the Bible says. They only care, well, I don't know, it's so base. So very, very base. I suppose if the prevailing attitude is one of hate, xenophobia, then anybody who comes in and expresses any kind of attitude, well, maybe we should have a little bit more humanity. Yeah, the person expressing that is going to be the controversial one. Oh, you're coming in and upsetting the golf cart. Yeah, damn right. Wait till I get to the ox cart. I cannot believe that anybody would argue about humanity or not humanity. Oh, I want to argue for being inhumane. And anybody who argues for humanity is some sort of weakling. What is that? Well, I'll tell you something else. Another thing that really bothers whatever it is we want to call them, the other side. If you present that particular, shall we say, message of humanity in any, shall we say, muscular liberal way, and all I'm talking about is just giving, a fraction of what they give. Oh, that fraction is much too much. Talk about upsetting the golf cart then. The good thing, though, is that there are many, 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 many people who do not think like that, who do not have those feelings of inhumanity as being a positive in the political process and a way to live. You can't be nice to your kids. You can't be a friend to your kids. You only have to be the authoritarian parent. And then you writ that large on the political process. And then you figure out, oh yeah, everybody's looking to be Big Daddy. And any manifestation writ large, they can say, that's my representation of what I want to be and what I am. I'm a little peeved. Babies. I suppose I should apologize to Jack London, too, because if your policy, if your goal is to have a iron boot grinding down on the face of a brown baby for all eternity, even though that costs much more to do that, well, obviously that's priceless. Stephen Miller, we're still looking at you. We smell the stench of this, you Santa Monica Goebbels. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, Neal Katyal was obviously at the top there, blasting the administration and taking Trump to task over his claims on family separation. No. You can't blame Obama. I know the black guy did something, and now you're going to hold it against him. And conflate it into something very much the opposite of what happened. Please. Well, on the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe, Puerto Rico still is not getting the emergency aid Trump bragged about 2 weeks ago. That's a Trump unit, 2 weeks. Trump officials keep getting caught hiding scientific reports they don't like, because if they don't hide them, it could cost them some money. And, I don't know, prestige among their masters. And claiming the post-World War II pact treated the United States unfairly, Trump privately talks about ending the 6-decade-plus-long Japan defense treaty. Because Japan isn't doing enough for the defense. You stupid idiot, we didn't want them to build a military for their defense. Because when they did the last time, it went badly now, didn't it? For all concerned. What? He went to a military-themed school, not a military school, military-themed. After the break, we then moved to the chef's table where 19 billionaires asked to be taxed more for the good of the country. I told you there's many people who do not have this idea that if equality occurs, I've lost something. And a white nationalist militia member is arrested for impersonating a U.S. Border Patrol agent at the border. No one competes for grinding an iron boot down on a brown baby's face for all eternity. Nobody. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Certainly apologize for going on so long there, but when even the guy who said it's okay for, military interrogators to crush the balls of a baby to make his dad talk, says that what's happening in these icebox baby gulag concentration camps is a bit much. Well, when even that guy says it, I get a little bit concerned because, what's next? Are they going to hold up the little kids by their thumbs to keep their parents from bringing them here? Well, if you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is the chat room link, and you could kick it around there. And you can kick it around on social media, and I'll tell you how to kick it around there in just a moment. But you could kick it around in our chat room, and Kelly Lincoln does monitor that for your very Netroots Radio experience. A very, very one, too. To the leftish of the page, from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site. Please do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. That recurring contribution, it allows us to continue resisting as the founders originally intended all those many years ago. In fact, they even wrote it down in the Constitution. So your generosity allows us to continue to do that. We are unable to do it ourselves, and though we dig deep, and we are well practiced at stretching those dollars beyond all compare. So even the cost of a latte espresso coffee drink once a month our way goes a long way to continuing this. Now it's 8 years this year, 8 years of continuous resistance radio, 24/7, 365, and we appreciate and thank you for your generosity. Follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And then during that scramble period, that's the professional term, I put it out. I put the links out on social media so you can find it. Now, of course, you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with every single podcast in the world. Every single one. Well, I suppose we should move on. We have some important stories to come up here. And this first offering in the Bistro Cafe, a West Coast cookbook and speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, I should warn people, we do put roasted corn in the chowder. That's what we call chowder at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Dan Desai Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this first offering. Well, the Trump administration is dragging its feet on delivering the $600 million in emergency funding to Puerto Rico that Trump approved more than 2 weeks ago, because Trump units are Trump units, and when he says something's going to happen in 2 weeks, it never does. I'm just saying, it's a Trump unit. You can put your Scaramucci unit wherever that is, a mooch, and you can put your Friedman unit. That's 6 months. 6 months for a Friedman unit. We live in perilous and different times now, don't we? Well, more than 2 weeks after Trump signed that legislation, the U.S. territory has not seen a dime of the promised funds. Just sort of like the promised land, too. Emergency funding for Puerto Rico's food stamp program was a sticking point in a disaster relief package, with Democrats pushing to help the American citizens of the island territory, and Republicans led by Trump objecting. Well, they should be able to scour the island through the trash and get their own food now, can't they? Can't they show some moral fiber and responsibility? All they're going to do is sit under their blue tarps and do nothing. I hate these xenophobic racists. I really do. And when I say hate, I mean rhetorical, because obviously we have to love all humanity. And I've also expressed in very vociferous terms at times, well, not vociferous, but shall we say firm, that you really don't want me to be poet, philosopher, king. Because in my realm, it does not hurt to be nice. It only hurts if you're not nice. Okay? That's right. The tower will be there for those who are not nice. So be nice. And that's probably why I'm not poet, philosopher, king. Because obviously, hate sells, you profit from it, and that would not exist in any of my realm. So when I say I hate Nazis, it's rhetorical. And I usually act upon that hate in a fashion that, wants to make sure that those types aren't really allowed to rule. And when I say allow, that's also rhetorical. You can keep them marginalized in some fashion. So Trump and his people are objecting to food stamps because it might coddle those Puerto Ricans. We've seen how they act in New York. Trump is an avowed racist against Puerto Ricans. Avowed. It's not a secret. In a rational representative democracy, one might say, those types of beliefs would, shall we say, color a decision. And again, Dan Desai Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like Sonny Perdue of the Department of Ag has gotten his feet in some hot water over rational thinking members of a representative democracy. Indeed. It's actively trying to muzzle and minimize scientific reports warning about the impacts of climate change because it could cost their people money. Retool? Why would we want to do that? Look what we did to the whales back in the day. Every drop of whale oil was spent until we decided, well, I don't know, why don't we, dig through the earth, into the bowels of the earth, and take out its fluids. And when I say bowels of the earth, I'm not kidding. If you've ever worked in an oil field, you'll know what I mean. I'm serious. You'll smell that and you go, that's very familiar. Some people say it smells like money. I don't know. I used to look at him and laugh. But they were just being rhetorical. You know that. Well, the research Trump officials are trying to keep hidden would help farmers deal with the impact of climate change, such as how climate change affects the protein in wheat fed to cattle, or how changes in carbon dioxide levels alter the nutrients in rice. Because if they knew that, they might want to do something about it now, wouldn't they? Instead of just buying, I don't know, the chemical industries. And I have friends who are chemists, all right? But I think adding protein to wheat and how carbon dioxide levels alter the nutrients in rice rather than fixing the climate. We're going to have some sort of spray wash at the produce stand that puts on the protein and considers the carbon dioxide alterations in levels to increase the nutrients in the rice. Some sort of spray wash. You hear the little like lightning and thunder sound. And then it kind of rains on everything, a little mist. Yeah, those are your vitamins right now in many places because all the vitamins have been leached out of the produce in the growing process to make it easier to pick and package. So really, don't fix the climate. We'll put a Band-Aid on something somewhere else. And I don't know, maybe that Band-Aid might cause an infection, but you won't see it until it's too late now, would you? Anonymous worker bees over at Reuters bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Now, I don't know why. I have my suspicions, of course. If anybody has had any contact with me by these public performances or in real life, know that I have a few notions about most things. And I have an idea about what's going on here. This is not by accident. It is by design. One might even say that Trump is ignorant of the history behind this pact that we signed. Wasn't it the USS Independence? Wasn't it? No, what? Oh my God! No, it was the Enterprise. Very famous. I mean, grainy film now. But there was this pact that was signed, and MacArthur was there, and representatives of the Japanese royalty were there, and the the representatives of the Axis and the Allied powers, and the ceremonial sword was passed, and we said, okay, Japan, you don't get to build a military anymore. We'll take care of it. We don't want you building a nuclear bomb for some time in the future to maybe come back and retaliate for what we did to you. In a war setting, okay? I think it's immaterial how all that started. Now we know it was for resources. They didn't call themselves the Imperial Japanese Prefecture now, did they? And we were just as imperialistic, so, we were at loggerheads. And we said, no, we're not going to allow them. When we said no, we're not going to allow them to build a military in that region. It went badly the last time when they went unchecked. We as victors in a modern world in which free trade should be, like the norm. We're all neighbors. And we'll take care of it. And Trump wants to tear that apart because he thinks everything is a protection racket. And Japan isn't paying their due for their protection. Not understanding that, look, so what if we're the most powerful military in the world? No powerful military wants to deal with 1,000 pricks. Especially when there's one giant prick running the show. They'll do their duty, and they'll be the tip of the spear. But you poke that spear and then you pull it back too many times, pretty soon it will go badly, and it won't go badly for those who you think, Mr. Trump, it will go badly for. The mind reels. Let's get to our break, and when we come back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world because we still have weather. And we're going to finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, I'm Scientific American podcast editor Steve Mirsky, and here's a short piece from the June 2019 issue of the magazine in the section called Advances. Dispatches from the frontiers of science, technology, and medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some science and technology stories from around the globe, compiled by editorial contributor Jim Daly. From Canada, archaeologists have now confirmed that a Tyrannosaurus rex skeleton found in the 1990s at a fossil site in Saskatchewan is the biggest and heaviest on record. At nearly 42 feet long and almost 20,000 pounds, Scotty, as it's called, surpassed the record set by the famous Sioux T-Rex, which was found in South Dakota in 1990. From Argentina, archaeologists identified a site where ancient humans killed and butchered giant ground sloths, Megatherium americanum, in the Pampas region in eastern Argentina. The find provides evidence that humans contributed to the sloth's extinction. From Kenya, a science teacher who won the 2019 Global Teacher Prize announced he intends to donate the $1 million award to benefit society. Peter Tabichi, a Franciscan friar, mentors a science club that came in first in its category in the 2018 Kenya Science and Engineering Fair. From the autonomous island of Anjouan in the Union of the Comoros, that's in the Indian Ocean between the east coast of Africa and the northwest end of Madagascar. Geochemists at Columbia University found a load of quartzite, a metamorphic rock formed from sandstone, on the island of Anjouan. The island is volcanic and had been thought to contain only igneous rocks. And from North Korea, physicists at Kim Il-sung University in Pyongyang have brokered a rare agreement to collaborate with Italy's International School for Advanced Studies in Trieste. The North Koreans will study computational neuroscience with Italian physicists. That was Quick Hits by Jim Daly.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1938. That was the day President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act. The night before he signed that landmark act, he addressed the nation in one of his famous fireside chats. He explained to the American people the significance of the measure he would sign the next day. The president declared, "Except perhaps for the Social Security Act, it is the most far-reaching, far-sighted program for the benefit of workers ever adopted here or in any other country. Without question, it starts us towards a better standard of living and increases purchasing power to buy the products of farm and factory." The act set the standard of the 8-hour workday. The fight for the 8-hour day had been a long, hard-fought cause for labor. The act also set a minimum wage of 25 cents an hour. Upon its passage, some 700,000 workers would be eligible for this minimum wage. It also restricted the use of child labor and set a 40-hour work week. It took considerable effort to get the act through Congress. It underwent multiple compromises and revisions. Labor Secretary Frances Perkins, the first female cabinet member in U.S. history, was a champion for the measure. The president recognized that there would be complaints over the measure coming from business. In his fireside chat, he warned, "Do not let any calamity-howling executive with an income of $1,000 a day who's been turning his employees over to the government relief rolls in order to preserve his company's undistributed reserves tell you that a wage of $11 a week is going to have a disastrous effect on all American industry." Since 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act has stood as one of the most significant bedrock laws for American workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Nearly 250 migrant children held in sickening conditions at a Customs and Border Protection facility in Texas are being moved. This after a team of lawyers, doctors, and advocates warned of major health and hygiene problems, including in some cases a lack of soap. The Trump administration argued in court last week that detained migrant children didn't need toothbrushes, medicine, and blankets in order to be held in, quote, safe and sanitary conditions.
It's within everybody's common understanding that, if you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary?
Maybe are a part. What do you say maybe? You mean there are circumstances when a person doesn't need to have a toothbrush, toothpaste, and soap for days?
Well, I think in CBP custody, it's frequently intended to be much shorter term. So it may be that for a shorter term stay in CBP custody that some of those things may not be required.
Attorney and law professor Warren Binford spoke out about her visit to Border Patrol facilities, describing the conditions as torture, abuse, and neglect, and saying that the facilities are so dirty, so filthy, and so unsanitary that children are literally dying.
They were the worst conditions that I've ever seen in the United States of America, and the fact that it was children who were being treated this way, who are literally being warehoused in a Lord of the Flies scenario where there's no direct adult supervision. They're having to take care of each other. Children described as many as 300 in a room in the warehouse. We have children who are being kept in cells where they are sleeping on concrete floors. There are as many as 25, 50, 60 children in these cells with open toilets in the middle. They're having to eat in these cells. They're having to defecate in these cells. The children are sick. There's an influenza outbreak in the facility. There's a lice infestation in at least one of the cells. And the children are being forced to care for one another because there's no one caring for them there.
Donald Trump signed an executive order Monday imposing new sanctions on Iran as retaliation for its downing last week of a U.S. military drone. Trump said the hard-hitting sanctions will financially punish Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iran's state media denounced the move as a sign of, quote, America's desperation. Khamenei responded, objecting strongly to the new sanctions, saying the door to diplomacy had closed. This year's Supreme Court term is winding down, with the final rulings continuing to be handed down this week. On Monday, the court ruled against the Trump administration to strike down a long-standing ban on trademarks that incorporate vulgar words or symbols. In a 6-3 decision about the clothing brand called Fucked, F-U-C-T, justices decided that a 1905 law violates constitutional free speech rights. Justices also rejected a bid to hear a challenge to Trump's steel tariffs and agreed to decide whether the federal government must pay insurers $12 billion under an Obamacare program aimed at encouraging them to cover previously uninsured people. Justices ruled 5-4 that a federal law allowing gun convictions relating to a crime of violence was too vague. Still to come, 2 major decisions on partisan gerrymandering and a citizenship question on the 2020 census. Stay tuned. Donald Trump is sitting for a plethora of interviews this week. During one in the Oval Office Monday with The Hill, Trump said that E. Jean Carroll, the advice columnist who has accused him of raping her in a Bergdorf Goodman fitting room in the mid-'90s, is lying. Quote, I'll say it with great respect. Number 1, she's not my type. Yeah, he really said that. But there's more. Number 2, it never happened. It never happened, okay? Trump also told The Hill that if a seat should become vacant on the Supreme Court before next year's elections, he wouldn't hesitate to nominate.
You put forward a nominee between now and the election if there's an opening on the Supreme Court?
Would I do that? Of course. You have any recommendations?
Well, you have a big, long list, right?
I do. I have a good list. I have a good list already chosen. I have a beautiful list of great, very talented people. Absolutely.
But do you square that with Merrick Garland?
No, I have a lot of respect for Judge Garland, by the way. I have to tell you that.
And after recently declaring FBI Director Christopher Wray wrong for advising anyone who receives campaign dirt from a foreign entity to report it to federal law enforcement, Trump declined to say that he has confidence in Wray. Oh, and he also said he doesn't have to consult Congress before launching an attack on, say, Iran.
I like the idea of keeping Congress abreast, but I wouldn't have to do that.
Sure. Nancy Pelosi actually said you must have congressional approval, so you disagree with her on that?
I disagree. I think most people seem to disagree, but I do like keeping them. They have ideas, that intelligent people, they'll come up with some thoughts. I actually learned a couple of things the other day when we had our meeting with Congress, which were, I think, helpful to me, but I do like keeping them abreast, but I don't have to do it legally.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit, slated for a high of 81 to 82. Just at elevation above us, they're expecting a high of 79 to 80. But my little weather station here at the mothership predicts 80 to 82. We'll see how it goes. Overnight lows will be in the mid to upper 50s. Tomorrow, I'll have somewhat of a precipitous drop in temperature. We're expecting a high of 72 here at the mothership. And quite a possibility of rain. Not quite a quarter-inch possibility in the afternoon and overnight. Low pressure is beginning to dominate the system. Overnight low tomorrow should be in the low 50s to upper 40s. So we'll see how that goes. I'm always advocate of minerals falling from the sky, especially in the summer. We like that. All right, so right now, grass pollen is still very high. The air quality index is in the good range, hovering at 18 parts per million. And that daytime UV index remains very high again at 9. Do take care. If you see those numbers in your region, wear a hat and take appropriate protections. I don't know if sunscreen is always the best, but cover up and stay out of that sun. Even if you're out in it, you can still stay out of it. Barometric pressure is falling, as I stated, at 29.69 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 62%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 75 and mostly cloudy. France is 92 degrees and sunny, and they do have a heat advisory. Get out, get to the coast, go to Normandy. Rome is 90 and sunny with a heat advisory as well. Kiev is 85 and fair. Kabul is 79 degrees Fahrenheit, fair but with heavy winds. They call that fair with heavy winds fair because the drones don't fly so well then. And, bomb wedding parties. Sometimes they have to have wedding parties on Tuesdays because it might be fair but windy and the drones won't fly and kill them. Got to do what you got to do for love. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 75 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, in the throes of their winter, is 56 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California, is 60 and fair with a wind advisory for small craft on the bay and offshore. And New York, is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. This first amuse-bouche here on the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes our way out of Cher Blue Media, again by Dan DeSay-Martin. A group of billionaires says a wealth tax is the least we can do to strengthen the country we love. Prominent billionaires are calling for taxes on large fortunes like theirs in order to help America fund priorities like health care, climate change mitigation, and infrastructure. Instituting a wealth tax is in the interest of our republic, read a letter sent Monday to all 2020 presidential candidates and signed by a group of 19 ultra-wealthy individuals. The group is not endorsing any candidates, but the letter did specifically praise Senator Elizabeth Warren's plan to institute a 2% wealth tax on every dollar over $50 million. The U.S. does not currently tax personal wealth in this way, even though wealth inequality is greater than income inequality. While recognizing Congress would need to iron out the details, the billionaire signatories agreed that a tax on their wealth and the wealth of anyone who has a fortune of more than $50 million represents a fair way to fund priorities that would benefit the nation as a whole. How unpatriotic of them, though. How terribly unpatriotic. You know, $50 million doesn't go as far as it once did. You do know that. 2% on that. You know how much money that's taken away? My God, that could fund a pool boy and an executive chef on the yacht. I know. I was there. In our republic, it is the patriotic duty of all Americans to contribute what they can to the success of the country, and the wealthiest are no exception, the letter stated. Others have put far more on the line for America. Those of us in the richest 1/10 of the richest 1% should be proud to pay a bit more of our fortune forward to America's future. We'll be fine. Taking on the tax is the least we can do to strengthen the country we love, the billionaires added. Now, they pointed out that the plan would generate about $3 trillion over 10 years, a massive amount of revenue that could fund smart investments in our future, as they said, such as cleaner energy, universal child care, addressing the opioid crisis, student loan relief, and tax credits for low-income families. Let me say something real serious without the accent. When people say that we have an opioid crisis, and the reason is because of some moral lack of fiber, studies have been proven that if you put a rat into a cage and give them a choice of activity like work or hit the sugar high, they're going to choose the work. And they do it about 99.99999999999% of the time. So the signatories includes Chris Hughes, one of the founders of Facebook, Abigail Disney, heiress to, you guessed it, the Disney fortune, and George Soros, everybody on the right's boogeyman, they're Goldstein. And 16 others, one of whom signed anonymously. Of course, these are real billionaires. And Trump wasn't part of the signatory, even anonymously.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Julio Cesar Chavez of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Yes, Julio Cesar Chavez. All right, well, a member of an armed group known for stopping migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border has been arrested after authorities charged him with impersonating a U.S. Border Patrol agent, and that's from court documents. Jim Benvey, spokesman for the Guardian Patriots, who've been camped at the border near Sunland Park, New Mexico, was arrested on Friday in Oklahoma after a warrant was issued on Wednesday in southern New Mexico. The U.S. Department of Justice filed 2 federal charges alleging that Benvey, age 44, passed himself as a Border Patrol agent in mid-April. And it was the second arrest to target members of armed groups since February. And the groups say they are trying to help the overwhelmed Border Patrol agents deal with the surge in arrivals of Central American migrant families. News photographs of Benvey taken in March showed him wearing a camouflage jacket with a badge reading fugitive recovery agent, and a patch with an eagle head insignia. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. We're going to meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesday, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.